with a director, with Joe O'Byrne, who we're really pleased that he is joining us in from Ireland tonight or this afternoon. And so welcome, Joe.
Hi, yeah, well, thank you for having me here. And hello, everyone.
He's in Ireland.
So Joe is a playwright and an actor, and
no, not an actor. No,
I'm sorry, forgive me, a screenwriter and a director.
Yeah.
And we're thrilled that he has been able to do 2 projects with us this year in our performances on screen, and both the Aran Islands and that we did back in the winter or early spring, and now that's currently playing The Cordelia Dream by Marina Carr. And so we're thrilled to continue this artistic dialogue with you, Joe. And what's it been like working on these performances on screen?
Well, it's at one level, there's always slightly nerve-wracking, particularly when we did the Aran Islands, because we filmed that in January earlier in the year, and the COVID numbers had gone crazy here in early January. So even the whole thing of just bringing even 2 or 3 people together was quite nerve-wracking and quite tense, you know, particularly with, say, Brendan Conroy, who was the actor in that, because Brendan was a man of around 70. So, you know, and at that stage, no one had been vaccinated. So just bringing people through, moving people into the city that was completely locked down was actually a nerve-wracking experience. So that's one side of it. On the other hand, it was great to have something to do, because there was nothing at all happening in January in Dublin when we were shooting this, or the Aran Islands, should I say.
Kieran tells me that we produced something akin to providing letters of transit, as in from Casablanca
well, yes, because I live about 30 kilometers outside, or 20 miles outside the city. And so I had to go into the city, but we were only allowed to move 2 kilometers from where we lived. And then I also had to go to the Aran Islands to actually film some of the material for it. And that meant a long journey, staying in a hotel where you had to show kind of reason for your visit and so on. So it was quite so Kieran did have to provide me with a letter of transit so I could actually move about in Ireland.
Yeah. I don't recall having gotten paid for that, Joe. As well, you know.
But that's part of the service, Kieran. You know, the letters of transit. You know, that's part of the goodwill.
Yeah, you are the producing director, Kieran.
Yeah. Well, Joe, tell us about that. Just about that experience on the Aran Islands when you went to. Just actually maybe just telling a little bit about how you shot Brendan Conroy in a theater, and then you brought in some footage from the island and joined them all together.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously we had done the play before, so it was kind of filming something that we had already performed, and including at the Irish Rep in 2017. And so the plan for the film version was actually to include footage from the Aran Islands. And so it did mean going to the Aran Islands in the first week in February. Now, the Aran Islands in the summer can be quite a bleak place if you get bad weather. But in February, it was just pretty bleak. The weather was brutal. People said to me, "Oh, it's great you're going to the Aran Islands." And I was saying, no, because you arrived on the boat at 11:30. The boat picked you back up at 5 o'clock, and there was nowhere to go inside. You couldn't go in anywhere. Everywhere was shut. And so you were out exposed to the elements. And I did that on the 2 islands, Inishmore and Inishmaan, filming. And I was the only visitor to the islands at the time. And yeah, it was an adventure, to say the least, you know.
Wow. What guided your thinking or your choices about what to shoot? Or did you just kind of explore it and take what you would?
It was basically, I mean, I had slightly more complicated plans, which, you know, I brought some gear with me, you know, which included the tripod and a gimbal and all these things. and the wind was so fierce that the only thing I could do was actually, I shot it on the phone, and I had to kind of keep my hands in gloves, take the phone out, and all I could do was hold it like that and filmed everything holding the phone like that, because anything else was just too complicated. It would take too long, and it was actually too cold. So I had to kind of do it as economically as possible, and then put the phone away and get my hands back in the gloves and in my pockets, you know. And then moved around the island from place to place. So
Joe,
yeah.
did you have any difficulty in trying to find footage that belonged in the days when Singh was actually on the island?
You mean the locations?
Yes.
No, well, basically when I got off on Inishmore, I followed the same route he did, because there's only one road. So I passed pretty much the very same things, and I felt equally as miserable as he did when he describes his original journey. It was, you know, I didn't get the rain, but I got a kind of fierce wind. It was, you know, it was very...
Joe, did you have anything like a cup of coffee or a sandwich? Nothing.
No. I brought food with me, you know, so I had to, for lunch, I had to hunker down behind a wall to get some shelter from the kind of the wind, to try and eat my food, you know. The only thing on the second day, I did find something when I was on Inishmaan. The only place open was the post office, and so I went into the post office, and the guy kind of took pity on me, because I presume they knew I was the only visitor on the island, so everyone knew who I was, that I was the madman going around filming in early February on.
Very true, Joe. Very true.
It was, and so he allowed me make a cup of tea. This was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and kind of said to me, you know, would you like something in that tea? And he produced a bottle of whiskey. And poured a shot of whiskey into my tea, and it went down very well.
Was it the best cup of tea you ever had in your life?
It felt like it at the time, because it had been a long day up to that, and it went down very well.
Well, I remember, like in reading Singh's thing, him talking about the satellite dishes for iPhones and the telegraph wires. I remember Singh describing those very particularly. Were you able to capture them or not?
No, I don't remember that in the books, Kieran. I think you must have read a different edition of the books than I did, you know.
Well, no, what I was asking there was it how, I mean, were you able to, did you have difficulty in trying to capture the primitive part of the island without the modern day world intruding upon it as you were trying to get the footage?
Yeah, the biggest problem were electricity poles, because they're everywhere.
Oh, right.
So they're in, you know, you're trying to take a shot and trying to keep the electricity poles and the wires out of it. They were the problem.
Yeah. Kieran, you faced something like that problem, didn't you, when you were doing footage for Meet Me in St. Louis?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it was. We were doing footage for the trolley song in Meet Me in St. Louis, and as the trolley was going by, you know, it was obviously stationary, and it was actors in their own apartments, you know, bouncing up and down on a trolley, and we had installed a trolley, and then we installed the footage that they passed, and it was a place out in New Jersey, and you'd just think you had it, where they were passing by these beautiful old Victorian houses, and then of course there'd be a jacuzzi, you know,
or a satellite,
or worse, vote Donald Trump, or something.
Vote him off the trolley. But the performance of the Aran Islands has some powerful and emotional moments, but if I'm not mistaken, the piece that John Millington Synge wrote wasn't intended originally to be a performance piece. Is that correct?
No, I mean, he wrote it's a series of journals or travelogues that he wrote over a number of years.
Can you talk a little bit about how you and Brendan went around making that transformation into a piece of drama and theater?
Well, I suppose it was really editing it down, and you know, because you know, for a 90-minute performance piece, you could only use selected parts of it, and so it was that was happened fairly easily. It's just, you know, I would have focused trying to find stuff about the storytellers and the much more kind of personal stuff where there were characters, and then it was just, you know, and finding suitable characters that Brendan would play very well, because, you know, Singh would have been a younger man, so Brendan would have been a slightly older man. So was picking some of the pieces that, you know, particularly the older storytellers, that would really suit Brendan's performance ability and his age. And so it was a kind of balancing act between the two. Like a younger man trying to play the older man is harder. And, you know, I think Brendan kind of pulled it off quite well, playing a 30-year-old man. I thought he, you know,
the astonishing actor.
You know, yeah. I mean, I thought they tried it in, you know, what was it, The Irishman, but I think we did better. You know,
there's something. I mean, he doesn't. And maybe it's because he works primarily on the stage, and I wasn't as familiar with his work, and he takes smaller roles in film and television, and we were just all kind of blown away by that astonishing performance. So. Just switching a little bit over to the Cordelia Dream, which all of our patrons and members are buzzing about, quite rightly. In some plays, you've got two characters with anger at each other, and it can be kind of like rats in a bag fighting it out. But with the Cordelia Dream, they don't have to be in the room together. They choose to be in some way. I mean, what do you think these two people hope to accomplish in this play, and do they succeed at it? Why do they stay?
Well, I mean, obviously the play starts with it's essentially, there are two acts, and each time it is the woman comes to visit.
Yeah.
So in a sense, she is the active ingredient.
Right.
And you know, she comes obviously with some aim or ambition or some purpose, and whereas the man in the piece is quite simply, he's there, and so he's the recipient of the visit. So he doesn't necessarily have a goal, and so it is initially about what the woman, what she has come for, and that was obviously, you know, was the first big thing we would have discussed as we began rehearsals. You know, what does she want? Yeah. She's the one who's come to visit, so she wants, you know, does she want to reconcile? Does she want to try and destroy him? Does she want to get revenge? You know, and so it was all those things we kind of looked at. You know, also, you know, as the woman character says, you know, it's a normal thing for, you know, a daughter to visit a father. It's not, you know, or even the other way around, though that doesn't happen. That's not the case here. So it is a natural thing, and it's about the bond. You know, it's a line that comes up a number of times in the piece about the bond between father and child, or father and daughter, and how that plays out, and in the, you know, in that switch about between the love and the hate and the love again, and you know, and the overriding thing, no matter what, is the love for a father for a daughter, or a daughter for a father, despite all the acrimony and all the anger and all the rage that exists between the two characters.
Joe, did you guys talk anything about whether he thought she would ever come or not?
No, that actually is something that didn't occur to us at all.
What do you think? Did he think she would ever come or not?
I don't think so, and I don't think he cared, and I think part of him would have preferred if she didn't. And yet, there is the moment where she says she's going to go, and he kind of insists that she stay.
Finish your glass of wine or something.
Finish your glass of wine. You know, it's a key moment, and you know, he could have just let her go, but he didn't, because he wanted something out of the equation. Once the visit had happened, then he was going to exploit it for whatever, whether it was what his reasons for that, or is it just so that he can try and demolish her more? Is
Right.
that, you know, is that the reason, you know, that he can call her, you know, mediocre or very mediocre? And again, you know, that, so it's that's something, no, Charlotte, we didn't actually think about it at all. Interesting thought. Now I must go back and redirect it, and then we'll
Let me know.
be back to you in a few weeks.
Did you, but in
Get back to me.
An updated version, you know.
well, I think it came up before in our script club that Marina didn't know that the woman was dead until she wrote the words. And I'm just curious because I wanted to ask this on our patron night, but we ran out of time. Did you and Danielle Ryan, the actress, make a decision about whether or not she was aware that she was dead when she arrives in the beginning of Act 2? Or is that something that just is not part of her head, but you just discover it together?
Well, the thing about the second act, and yes, if Marina said she didn't know that the character was going to be dead, I kind of believe her, you know, because there are times in the second act where you do have the sense that the author is moving around, but not quite certain where she's going. I don't mean that in any negative sense, but that is the way you sometimes write, is you're writing something and you don't quite know where you're going to end up. Sometimes when you write, you know exactly how it's going to end.
Yeah.
And sometimes you write when, you know, not really knowing how it's going to evolve and how it's going to end. That is so there are those two ways. And to answer the question, yes, we did discuss that, and that it seemed to us that it's clear in each act that the character of the woman comes with an intention, and so that she is a dead character, knows she's dead, and comes with a particular intent.
Right.
And the intent is revealed at the very end, that you know, that she is going to give him the eternal notes and help him complete a work that he's failed to complete up to that point.
Lisa Fain had a question for you. Lisa,
Yeah.
you had a question.
Yes, I wonder,
Let's highlight this.
oh, hello. I'm actually here in the offices of the Irish Repertory Theatre. Danielle at the talkback mentioned how this, how you rehearsed the work as it was a theater piece, and how she felt like it was very different from a film that she'd done, but also very different from theater. And I'm just wondering what your experience is with that. Have you directed films in a very different way? And what do you think this is that we're creating, if it's not film and not theater? Just to hear a little bit about that.
Well, I think the first thing is that once you place a camera in front of something, you are filming it. And, you know, it's always, you know, a case of, you know, whether you use or explore what the camera and the editing facilities have to offer, you know, because it is possible just to stick a camera up and make a record of the show. And so just, you know, and, you know, it just made sense, you know. I always think as well that if you put a camera in front of a theater show, the camera is just seeing everything. Whereas, you know, the thing about what happens when you're watching a theater show is that your eye does the editing. Is that you're watching a theater show, and okay, it's there in the full stage, but your own eye is making decisions about what you're actually focusing on and watching. And so in some ways, then I thought, when we're filming this, then we need to actually mimic that. And so it makes sense to, because the eye is always then will focus. You're watching a theater show, you're focusing in on something. You maybe, you know, if you're in a big theater so far away, you can't see very much anyway. But you know, at the same time, the eye is still editing as you watch the show. It's just that you are not always aware of how you actually do that consciously. And so it just makes sense then when, you know, creating something like this, that you're actually taking, you know, shooting it so that we're going in for the close-ups, you know, that the eye would naturally do if, you know, if you were sitting in a small theater and watching, say in this, you know, in the Irish Rep there, your eye is focusing in on details. And so I think if you're just placing a camera and without editing for close-ups, then it can be a frustrating experience for an audience. Now, obviously, we did rehearse it fully as a theatre show. In other words, we rehearsed it in 2 acts, where on, you know, in the final week of rehearsal, we were doing run-throughs as if we were preparing to do a theatre show. And it was a kind of a very odd experience particularly for the actors. It was a kind of strange dynamic because, you know, if you're building up towards an opening, you have, you know, you're building up doing run-throughs, and then you're building up towards doing a tech and dress rehearsal and all that, but everything in continuity. Whereas we were building everything up so that we would do a final run-through on the last day of rehearsal, and then go in the following Monday and start breaking it down in 3-minute segments. So it was I think the actors found that difficult, particularly in the final week. There was a strange kind of dynamic there, and not necessarily a negative thing, but it was just that you know, doing run-throughs started to feel slightly pointless because we were going to be breaking it down.
Would you do it another way, Joe, if you were doing it? No. Yeah.
It is the way to do it because you know, well, particularly because if you set aside a 3-week rehearsal period, another way of doing it is that you rehearse shorter and shoot longer. But then that's a more expensive option, you know, that you spend 2 weeks shooting and maybe 2 weeks or maybe less rehearsing, and then you're rehearsing and then you shoot, and then you rehearse and then you shoot. Whereas this is, you know, we were able to shoot the thing in 4.5 days because the actors were fully rehearsed in each sequence. And obviously in the blocking and setting it up on stage, I would have been doing that knowing where the camera in each scene, each section was going to be. So we rehearsed it in a way. The show was actually rehearsed not to be seen from the front, but actually to be seen from all angles. It was actually rehearsed as if we were playing in the round.
Right.
Which was kind of which Stephen found difficult because Stephen likes the audience, so he always wanted to play out front. He's very used to that. His many years experience in the theatre, so he's used to actually the limelight and kind of always wanted to face the audience, you know. So I kept saying, no, we're playing in the round. Don't worry about the audience out front.
Yeah.
They're all around you.
And I don't think that people just watching it were also aware that it was actually, you know, on a set, that it was a set that had been built for this, you know, solely for this production. That it wasn't that they actually thought it was in a room, you know, that it was, you know, with the window and it wasn't until the camera shifted over and you got to see the you know, the seating that people became aware of that.
Yeah, I mean the set is actually very simple. You know, obviously the big thing in this show is a grand piano. Once a writer puts a grand piano into a play, that becomes a big part of the set. And you know,
it's like a gun. If there's a gun, you have to use it, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and we had a piano which sorry, just something changed here on my viewing. Yeah, and but unfortunately, we had a grand piano that nobody really played. You know, to be honest, you know, because in fact because Stephen did play a bit of piano, but actually, you know, he's not playing the piano at the start and at the end. And the young girl did play the piano, and then David Dance, who was our composer, we did use his hands on 2 scenes. So the piano did get a little bit of attention. It wasn't just a prop for the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, the set is quite simple. We use essentially the structure of the space and the stage. And originally I didn't want to do it in the new theatre where we did film it, because I thought it's a bit small. to fit everything in. And then I thought, okay, if we build the window into the audience, like we built the window in the second row of the audience, then it actually created more space, and you had that sense of it also created that sense at times of, I think, of the set spilling out into where the audience used to be in the old days when we did have real theater and real audiences.
In the old days when we had one.
Yes, exactly.
The before times. I just want to encourage people, if they would like to join in the conversation, please post your questions in the chat, and then Emma will highlight you. But the lighting design in Cordelia Dream and the design elements seem to be creating a slightly less real mood, or at least that's how I took it. I especially in the second act, and it seemed like it's not all light, and it's not, you know, there's kind of, they're shape shifting and wandering in and out of each other's realities. Can you talk about your designers?
Yeah, well, I mean, the set design is by Robert Balla, who is kind of one of Ireland's most famous set designers and artists, and was the set designer for Riverdance and many other shows. And yeah, I mean, Robert was, you know, we always wanted to keep it very, very simple, and like the set is really, really simple. Obviously, we had to design the window with the curtains, and that was the principal thing we had to create. And the rest is a series, the grand piano, a series of just objects, and then ordinary lamps, and that's it. You know, I mean, there is one big lamp outside the window. It's like a big film lamp, but beyond that, the lighting is very simple. The different feeding of the light is created by the different positions of the camera, and that, you know, that was always built into the how I rehearsed it, is that I was rehearsing it with a view to the fact that we would be changing the perspective of where the camera was quite a lot, and it kept the actors moving quite a lot, so there was a constant sense of change, and that created the different lighting effects, because it's actually as the actors move in and out of the different lights, because the lights don't change.
Right.
There's no, the lights aren't being adjusted at all throughout each act.
When Marina was on, and she talked about, you know, slightly but not a ton about her personal life, in that, you know, that her father was also a writer, and that there was a conflict, you know, between you know, one that has had enormous success as has Marina had, and her father maybe not so much. Did you get a chance to explore any of that with Marina when she visited, or was it?
No, I mean, we would have been familiar with, you know, I'd met Marina's father a few times, and you know, because he had come to a number of the shows I did early on, and you know, he was a writer, and you did get a sense that he was a little bit frustrated at his own lack of success. It definitely was a feature, and you know, the stories are there of him turning up at Marina's openings and creating scenes, yes, but we didn't discuss that. You know, it was not something that that would have been up to Marina to talk about, and she didn't. But we would have been familiar with the stories, and certainly Stephen was, and so. You've
done other Marina Carr plays earlier on?
Me? No.
Sorry, I thought I thought you just said when I was doing them earlier on, I would have met him. Sorry, I misunderstood.
No, when earlier on, when I was doing shows earlier on, different, not Marina's plays. No, it's kind of strange that I've never done one of Marina's plays before, but they never gave me the job, you know. So what can I say? The only ones who gave me a job directing Marina Carr's play was the Irish Rep. So what can I say? You know,
we saw a good thing when we saw it.
Exactly.
I want to include Sharon Fain in the conversation. She has a good question that I think actually I'd be curious to hear Joe, Kirana, and Charlotte what you think is going to come next. So can you unmute Sharon?
I just from on a historical perspective, as we're looking back on these past 2 years almost, what will we be calling this new medium? I'm just fascinated with it. I think it's such a creative time. Do we name it?
Well, God, I mean, they've all been they've been different in their own ways, though. I know when we had initially started thinking of the Cordelia Dream, we were, God help us, and thank God we didn't pursue it, but we were thinking of doing it in a green screen because it was two characters in the same room and not necessarily, needing, in fact, they didn't connect physically very much. So we thought we can do this as a green screen production where the actors can do it from their own homes, and we will fill in the blanks as we have done with the other shows, like A Touch of the Poet and the Weir, where we filled in the background, and Meet Me in St. Louis afterwards. So, but for this really, really intense play to try to figure out, the emotional life of these actors in a distance, we just think it would have been a terrible idea.
It would have, I'm here to tell you, it would have been a terrible idea because you felt those two people in a room. And I think that was one of the most important things about that production. They had to be there. They had to cross one another. They had to look into one another's eyes if they could. And don't you agree, Joe? Would you have enjoyed doing that if they had not been in that room?
I think it would have been very difficult because it's so much of the play depends on the energy between the two of them, that and an awful lot of the play as we did it is about them, getting close and then moving away, and just that kind of accordion of movement it kind of really kind of gives it an edge that you could lose.
Especially, and since they watched one another, secretly watched one another was so important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just on Sharon's question, I mean, we all talk about this being a kind of hybrid form. In some ways, I just feel this was what's been going on over the last year was a development that was happening anyway. It's just brought it forward by about 10 years. Because we'd seen over the last number of years like the big brands, the big whether it's the Met or the National Theatre in London, they've been doing kind of broadcasting their shows into cinemas and doing that kind of stuff, and and they were probably developing that as a revenue stream, as a way of making money, but also as a way of reaching out to not everyone can get to the Met in New York. Or afford the tickets or whatever it is, or get to London to see shows. So it's something that had been happening anyway, happening in a slightly different way, in that what the Met does or the National Theatre in London were doing is kind of, they were filmed versions, but they were presenting them as if you were watching it kind of live, rather than actually saying this is actually a pre-recorded version of the show. But what's happened over the last year is that that concept has now spread to many other theatres. Obviously, the Irish Rep having done a huge amount, and it's I always felt it was going to be part of the future. I just didn't think it would all happen so quickly, and and obviously when we come out of this a bit better, and we're able to go back to live performance, it'll be a case of you all, with every show, do you create a proper film version of it so that it is there available on the archive, or to be viewed, because not everyone in the world can get to the Irish Rep to see the shows, and maybe foreign travel is something that will be less of a feature of our lives in future, so getting to New York to see a show may not be as easy as it once was.
Yeah, we've really seen, I mean, half of our audience now is often not in the tri-state area. And And we've seen also differently abled people and people that have a hard time getting on buses and trains have been taking advantage of this throughout the year, which is, we didn't necessarily plan it that way, but that is part of what happened, which is really great. We have a question from Marla Del Collins. Marla, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, Marla.
There you go. Okay.
Hi, Marla.
Hi. Of course, I have so many questions, but first of all, I just want to say, Joe, that I've seen both of your productions and they were both spellbinding and riveting, but both in different ways, but still extraordinary. And what I was wondering was, you know, this play is mostly dialogue. And what I found interesting is the woman is almost treating this elderly fellow, her father, as a child, you know, the kind of thing that a mother would do. Oh, you did that, did you? And I thought that was really interesting. But I was wondering if you thought about what you would do to create a climax, or usually a play has some sort of climax, or perhaps another, maybe two. And I thought about it as I was watching it, with the father with his woman's hat on and so on. And there was almost a chase scene going on in there in a way. And I was wondering how much liberty you could have taken or wanted to take with scenes that could have been speeded, the moments that could have been speeded or slowed. And also there was another climax for me, which was when she revealed herself to be dead. And what you thought about in terms of using film techniques, because you had that possibility. I'm not sure about budget or anything like that. Maybe some of that was also taken into consideration. But what you could have done perhaps with a bricolage or a collage of photos, which you did, but could all of that have just ruined the mood of this and the continuity of this, or had you given this any thought?
No, I had thought about all of that, and you know, because in an early conversation with Danielle, who plays the woman, you know, she'd seen the Aran Islands, and you know, the Aran Islands is full of external footage.
Yes.
And you know, she asked me, you know, was I going to do anything like that? And I kind of said no, I didn't think so, because and the main reason for that is because I thought it would take away from the intensity of the piece. That anything that would take us outside the room or to externals wouldn't work. Now, the one thing I did do, because is I brought in the young girl as a younger version of her, because I thought that's internal to the room. And it also then kind of focused, it helped to focus on the key emotional moment in the past, where the father turned on the child. So that was my thing, is I thought if there was a lot of external elements, it would really just break that kind of the intensity of the interaction between the two actors. And so, you know, it was something, for example, Marina said to me, you know, when I asked her, you know, would she be okay with me adding a character, because you know, once you know, it is we are doing a version of our play, and so we did actually putting in the young girl, and even the hands. It did have to have her imprimatur, you know, and she was fine with that. And then she said, well, you know, what about imagery of the bucket and the spade? And I thought about that, and I thought, no, that's imagery from outside the room. And so, you know, with the girl was always, the young girl was always around the piano, you know, and the piano would have been the object that he would have brought with him. That you know, he's in a different room than the room where the young girl would have grown up, but the piano is the object that would have been with him. all the way. And so I thought anything focused around the piano, yes. And so, yeah, I did think about all those options, and I kind of thought, no, I thought it'd only be taking away from Marina's writing, from the play, from the intensity of the performances. And, you know, and I went for the big climax is, you know, for me, the big climax of the play was always, you know, right from the start was going to be the moment where she reveals how she hung herself and the child came in, yes, and discovered her. And that for me was always the key emotional moment of the piece, and it is the quiet climax of it.
Right, right.
And the, you know, it's the emotional center of it.
Gotcha.
And it was always conceived as it would be a focus pull. Danielle would be in the background telling the story, and then at a certain point the focus would shift to Stephen's face in silence as she keeps telling, and then shift back to her. And that was the and that's using the cinematic means in a I would consider a subtle way, you know, that focus shift happens all the time, but it requires a lot of work to do that. And but that was the key cinematic, what I would consider cinematic moment of it, without being anything external there.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Marla. How do you think theatre is going to evolve in Ireland? I mean, what trends do you anticipate?
It's hard to know. I mean, you know, I think ultimately everyone wants it to go back to the way it was. You know, people have their hankering. Can we not just kind of do theatre the way we used to do it, and kind of with full audiences? Well, we're never always full audiences, but with audiences and plays on the stage as we used to. And I think certainly that's what people will want is, can we have back what we had before? Yeah. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I think certainly in the initial phase that would be the case. But as I said, I do think that everyone is going to keep an eye on the option of the digital version of whatever they do, and you know, as an addition. But I think everyone's hope is that it will go back to the way it was.
Joe, what were you doing when this all happened? Were you working on a project?
I was working on I was working in Germany and Italy on a re-editing of a 4-part series about a rock band, kind of a fictional about a rock band, a kind of very complicated project. I was about to do a theatre show, and I was about to have a novel published. And
and what happened to all of those plans?
Well, the novel didn't happen, didn't get published, and I won't go into the details, but it may not now, and that is like a thing that's 2.5 years work. But the rock band thing, I don't know where we did our work. It was we did the re-edit, and the theatre show didn't happen that I was working on. So it was, I would consider it, yes, it was quite catastrophic. You know?
Are there any plays or playwrights that you'd like to direct in the future that you'd be interested in?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't answer. I couldn't answer that question. You know, there's a playwright called Joe O'Byrne. I wouldn't mind directing one of his plays.
Have you directed?
I've heard of him.
Before?
Huh?
He always directs. He always directs.
Yeah, I directed quite a few. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, actually, I was very happy to have directed one of Marina's, because I've always kind of, the job always seemed to go to somebody else here, you know, when it came to one of Marina's plays. And
we should say about it, with Joe that it's been a long-term relationship with Joe. That one of the first was like back in 1996, I believe, with a play called Frank Pig Says Hello, which was Joe's own adaptation of The Butcher Boy by Pat McCabe. And then we commissioned Joe to go and do a version of Dorian Gray, which Joe also directed, and was
2001, was it? I think 2001.
was it 2001? Wow.
So, yeah.
So there you go. That was
Yeah.
and Joe directed both of those. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I can't, you know, I can't think of an author at the moment. I haven't really been thinking in terms like that. So, yeah.
That's fine. You can think about it and call Kieran and Charlotte.
I'll think of it. I'll get back to you on that, Seth.
I'm just so surprised he's not coming up with the list, you know, that he's.
I know.
Yeah.
This has been such a pleasure having you with us.
Oh, Kieran, we haven't heard the last of him.
Oh.
I know. So thank you so much for joining us for this afternoon. We're so grateful for your artistry.
No more questions. No more questions there.
I think we're at a good stopping place. I think this is a good place to.
Okay.
Okay, but feel free, if you can put ourselves on gallery view, and we can all see each other's faces, and wave goodbye to each other. Thanks for a lovely afternoon.
Thank you all for joining us.